दोस्तों 17 September 2024 we are going to discuss editorials from The Hindu and you are welcome to Namo Academy of Excellence. First article here we will discuss about greenwashing of the Indian Railways. What are all the costs associated with greenwashing? We'll discuss this article in detail. There was a report published by Rights Limited. This is a consultancy arm of the Indian Railways. They have won two contracts for repurposing six broad gauge diesel electro locomotives for export of some African railways. These locomotives they will be converted to use on railways that will use to keep a gauge of almost 1067 mm, almost 1 meter, against this 1676 mm used for broad gauge in Indian railways. If you see broad gauge, basically there are two types of gauges in the rail construction, like 1600, and now India is moving towards this 1067. While Indian Railways, in collaboration with this Rights Limited, the consultancy public sector undertaking, there are several such organizations are there. One thing is Rights, and another one is IRCON. They have exported locomotives to countries such as Asia and Africa in the past. This is the first time that second-hand locomotives they have been proposed to be exported for gauge conversion. There is no doubt this kind of commendable effort of re-engineering that involves rebuilding of the locomotives on narrower platform. This story lies hidden in this, what are all the costs associated with and wasting unmatched annals in the Indian railways. So this is very fictitious goal. Whether we can achieve or not, we don't know. But this may be associated with lot of cost. That's what author says. If you see right to information data, even policy justification also, the report tells soon to be redundant diesel locomotives even as far as March 31st, 2023. This information obtained under Right to Information Act. So there were 585 local diesel motive. They have been, kept idled. They have been stored in various locations across Indian railway network because of the electrification issues. Further, 60% of these locomotives they have life of more than 15 years. Today, the figure is reported to be around 760, from 568 to almost 760 numbers are there. How and why did Indian Railways end up in a situation where hundreds of diesel electric locomotives are in good working condition over the years, but still left them in redundant condition? Why? What was the reason? The answer is policy of the government. They wanted to electrify entire broad gauge network of Indian Railways in mission mode at huge pace. Railway electrification, this has been started long back. They have taken several considerations such as economic and financial viability. They have joined universal declarations such as world peace, universal brotherhood. Now we are talking all these things, but when you see the issues are still prolonging. Today, railway electrification, this is generally broadly on two grounds: saving foreign exchange by reducing import of the crude oil, reducing environmental pollutions, basically second point. So this kind of adoption is basically switch into renewable energy resources, solar and wind energy. In fact, official pamphlet issued by Ministry of Railways in 2021, they have told about mission 100% electrification, moving towards net zero carbon emission. There were several objectives were there in that mission to provide environment friendly zone, green and clean mode of transport to the people, even to obtain potential use of renewable energy, especially solar, by using huge land parcel available along the railway tracks. So these were the several promises that were taken in Mission 100% Electrification. That was a pamphlet issued by Ministry of Railways in 2021. If we examine justification in greater detail, the benefit of saving foreign exchange is in absolute terms. But when you view in the consumption of diesel in the country, consumption for railway traction is very low. Diesel consumption is very low. One side we are talking diesel will make pollution. but we are consuming very low. According to a study conducted by AC Nielsen, and it was published by Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas in January 2014. When electrification of the Indian railways was proceeding at conventional pace, 70% of the diesel oil consumption in the country was by transport sector. On this, share of railways was just around 3.24%. So you can understand how much is the percentage of railways. In comparison, trucks they have consumed almost 28%. Agriculture sector is 13%. Share of the railways even further reduced to 2% in 2021. So this 100% rail electrification, this will eliminate one of the smallest segment of the diesel consumption. This will leave road sector where 70% of the consumption is happening. This will make them to free. You are worrying on one side railways about making net zero and all, but major issue where you need to focus is on road sector. If you see about environmental consideration, environmental benefits, they are more not in justified in Indian context. So let us see some facts. Electricity, this is secondary source of energy, except if it is generated by a lightning. Electricity needs to be generated by expanding primary sources of energy from fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas. Nuclear energy is there, kinetic energy of water, they have stored at some height, and we are utilizing that water in the form of kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is converted into electrical energy through wind. We have even solar and wind power also. What is present situation in India? 50% of the electricity generated today, this is through coal-fired thermal power plants. Indian railways they play a crucial role in transportation of the coal from the pit heads where coal lies to thermal power plants. 50% of the railways total freight earning about almost 1.7 lakh crore in 23-24. This was generated by transporting coal from various purposes. 80%, like 40% of the total freight earning was generated by transporting coal to thermal generating plants. Replacing diesel locomotive with electric locomotive, this will result in electric locomotive being powered by this electricity. 50% of electricity is generated by burning of the coal. So we use more coal, more pollution, and more electricity. This cycle will keep on continuing. Coal, you produce electricity, again railways will use for making electricity for railways to run, you again use coal. So this will make pollution. So coal is considered as the dirtiest fuel environmentally. Complete switchover by Indian Railways to electric traction. This will shift the pollution caused by diesel locomotive near the railway track. Even source of generation and causing a lot of pollution in the atmosphere also. Unless and until about 80% of the total electricity generated in the country, they come from non-fossil fuels. Whether it comes today or not, it has to be seen in the far right period. Any claim of 100% electrification of Indian railways, this will make a green railway is like fantasy kind of dream. Incidentally, before this kind of situation, green railways become reality, railways will have to find alternative commodities to coal in order to prevent this financial meltdown. Arthur says we are not interested in debate of the electric traction versus diesel traction. The issue is about phasing the conversion of Indian railways into green railway. In this process, large number of serviceable diesel locomotives that have become redundant, we can use them. If all these locomotives are already stabled and lined up today, we could have stretched almost 16 kilometers and majority of them, they might be heading to scrap yards. What about the disaster management and strategic purposes? This mission 100% electrification of the Indian railways, this result in the gap in the near term. Indian Railways today, they have 4,000 diesel locomotives. Even improving 100% electrification of the system, this will not be redundant overnight. Even there was a report in Financial Daily, a newspaper. Senior official told 2,500 diesel locomotive they have been proposed to be retained by railways. for disaster management and strategic purposes. So it is beyond our understanding what disaster will require such a number of large locomotives to be set aside unless there is conviction by Indian Railways to avoid sending off these locomotives to residual service life to scrapyard. Even they reported that another 1,000 locomotives will continue in service for next few years in order to meet these traffic commitments. If you understand in other words, 100% electrified green railway, this will constitute about 3,500 dirty diesels in coming future. And there is even not so green commodity, king coal. This coal we need to avoid at any cost. So if you go to electricity, this may cause very harm also. These things will raise questions. What is the ultimate purpose of achieving this electricity 100%? This railway mission 100% electrification. This is an example of what happens when headlines they put slogans of promoting these kind of projects in order to substitute for well thought out policies. This will result in huge wastage of taxpayers' money. But does anyone care? This is the article about. This is a good article. They have commented about railways, like how wastage of the resources are happening. Electrification, we need to focus more on this front, but generation of the electricity should not come from coal. Coal is basically pollutant. It should come from non-renewable energy resources. Whether we are progressing in this area, that's what we need to concerned about. Next article is about imposing heavy GST rate on tobacco and sugar products. So this article financial point of view has been discussed in detail. So we will discuss here. Over the past 7 years, GST was introduced in 2017. There is no significant increase in GST rates for harmful products. What are all those? Tobacco, sugar, sweetened beverages, except only two products, like certain products have been hiked. National Calamity Contingency Duty NCCD on tobacco. This made these products more affordable. They even undermined the efforts in order to prevent their consumption. Recently, a proposal by group of ministers in order to raise the highest GST tier on these tobacco and sugar sweetened beverages from 28% to 35%. This is kind of welcome step. Why? These kind of tax reforms, they are essential for, to tackle this public health and financial challenges associated with these kind of products. What is the impact of GST rate hike? If you see, India is the second largest consumer of tobacco globally. 28% of the adults about to 15 years, 8.5% of the students between 13 to 15 years, they are using tobacco in some form. Tobacco is kind of leading risk factor in non-communicable diseases. And these kind of non-communicable diseases, they are causing almost 3,500 daily deaths. In 2017, annual economic burden of the tobacco use and even second-hand smoke, this estimated 2,340 billion. That means almost 1.4% of GDP. इतना जीडीपी तो हमारा एजुकेशन सेक्टर को भी नहीं है, समझ गए? So this is exceeding almost 538 billion collected annually in tobacco tax revenue. The proposed GST hike to 35%, this will reduce tobacco consumption. It will boost the revenues. Even preliminary analysis, even estimates suggest 35% rise in GST. This would lead to 5.5% in price increase, 5% drop in consumption, even 18.6% revenue rise in BDs. For cigarettes, prices will increase by 3.9%, consumption will decline by 1.3%, even revenue will grow by 6.4%. Smokeless tobacco, they have mentioned price about all these things. Even a group of ministers, they recommended that in order to raise GST rates to 35%, this is kind of positive step. But it falls short of the peak rate allowed in GST law is almost 40%. It falls short, like 5% it falls. 40% rate, it would have greater impact. This would lead to sharper price increase, larger consumption reduction, even additional 72 billion in revenues. It would also risk the industry shifting and even tax burden also. Currently, if you see, tax burden on tobacco products is kind of uneven. There is there are taxes that account for only 22% of the retail prices of BDs, 49% for cigarettes, 64% for smokeless tobacco. This 35% GST rate, this will narrow the gap slightly. It raised the respective tax share from 26%, 51%, 65%. But 40% if you impose instead of 35% tax, this will make disparity even more. World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, WHO, FCTC. India is a signatory to it, and this World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, they recommend all tobacco products to be taxed comparison to prevent substitutions between them. Even concerns from tobacco industry about illegal trade because of the high taxes, they have been highly noted. There are evidences tax hike have minimal impact on the illegal trade. There are factors such as tax administration, regulatory framework, government commitment, governance strength, social acceptance, informal distribution network. They play a more significant role in order to determine the scale of illegal markets. How to balance GST and excise taxes. Another notable issue on reliance of this GST is ad valorem tax, basically to regulate tobacco consumption. Ad valorem, this is kind of tax. They are less effective than specific excise taxes in order to prevent tobacco consumption when they are tied with actual product prices. Even industry can manipulate them also. We introduced GST, share of these excise taxes in tobacco, they have declined. This reduced tax system effectiveness in discouraging tobacco use. Many countries with GST or even this value added tax, they have implemented these kind of specific tax duties on harmful products such as tobacco. So along with GST, we can author suggesting is we can impose these kind of taxes also. When you impose these kind of tax price will increase. People may not buy except like some rich people. They will buy, they will get cancer, khel khatam. So India also should consider kind of raising excise taxes alongside GST version. They should have more comprehensive taxation framework. There have been much discussion on the focused part of the tobacco. This proposed GST hike on these sugar sweetened beverages, this is very important and significant also. Excessive consumption of sugar sweetened beverages, this is major contributor to obesity, diabetes, even other non-communicable diseases. Increasing GST rate to 35%, this could discourage consumption of these sugar-based products, even align India's broader public health goals. India is one front, it is starting fit India. Another end, we are consuming sugar. When you eat sugar, you will become obese. When you become obese, health issues will start. Hospital will benefit them. The main issue is you can cut it here. Sugar, when you cut it down almost to 0%, so then all these issues can be prevented. What are the key considerations before GST Council? Now, GST Council, they considers group of ministers recommendation. Now it should be the opportunity to reform the taxation on these harmful products. Raising GST rates to 40% on tobacco, even sugar sweetened beverages, this will enhance public health benefits. It will also align peak rate under GST law also. Even high excise tax, this will create mixed tax structure. This will prove more effective in reducing consumption and instead of relying on this ad valorem tax system. Reducing this kind of discrepancy in tax burden between BDs, cigarettes, smokeless tobacco. This is very crucial in order to discourage substitution to follow even global best practices. These steps they significantly reduce health and economic impact of tobacco and sugar sweetened beverages. They also generate essential revenue for the government. So this is the article about levying highest GST rate on tobacco and sugar sweetened beverages. Next article we will discuss about green hydrogen and what are all the challenges associated with its financing. Green hydrogen is very important. Recently, you might have heard about green hydrogen train. This has been taking place in Germany. So, focus on green hydrogen is growing. We also have mission green hydrogen. India is also embarking on green hydrogen. So, we will discuss this article in detail. What could be future prospects about green hydrogen? India, we want to become net zero by 2070. What do you mean by net zero? We want to remove all our processes. Suppose say you are manufacturing shoes. Manufacturing will produce a lot of emissions. These emissions should be reduced to zero. Means whatever bottlenecks are there in this manufacturing of shoes, whatever the emission process are there, you need to replace them with climate friendly things. So now you can consider against all other industries. So India wants to become net zero emission by 2070. Green hydrogen, this will offer a crucial pathway in order to decarbonize industrial sector. India has ambitious target of producing 5 million metric ton of green hydrogen annually by 2030. So this will signal us as a leadership in the green hydrogen sector. But there are several economic and financial challenges there that will threaten our green hydrogen ambition. There was a report of analysis by Bloomberg and EF. They told India is on track to meet 10% of the stated goal. Even there is slow progress because of the disparity between green hydrogen production cost and traditional blue hydrogen cost. Green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, there are several differences are there. There is a differential pricing. This makes very challenging to drive domestic uptake of this green hydrogen because when prices are high, people will not buy. Then you may not produce all these things. When consumption itself is low, when demand itself is low, supply will automatically come down, right? Even they won't attract private investment also. It creates kind of classical market deadlock. So in order to understand these things, we need to have viable economics and we need to understand in detail, right? What are all the barriers? The economics of green hydrogen, they are dependent on two factors. One, levelizing cost of electricity, even electrolyzer cost also. Both of them, they are driven by the capital. In emerging markets like India, there are high risk push up for borrowing cost. This will lead to average weighted cost of capital. Cost of capital is very, very important in financial terms, like weighted average of cost of capital, what you are borrowing today and how much risk premium you are paying. Investment, it will cost about 50 to 80% in this lost cost of electricity, levelized cost of electricity in renewable projects. But if you see weighted average cost of capital, this will impact the cost significantly. So all these things what they have been discussing is India needs to adopt innovative financing mechanism, policy frameworks in order to de-risk investment in and also to attract capital in order to scale our green hydrogen sector. On the policy front, several countries they have shown the way. United Kingdoms, they have started low carbon hydrogen standard certification. This will provide kind of market confidence. Similarly, strategic hydrogen hubs are there in US, Japan, Australia. They kind of reflect shifting away from traditional industrial development approaches. So this will enable infrastructure development and these infrastructure will follow the demand and they are developing integrated ecosystem. What do you mean by integration? You develop, like infrastructure, production, innovation, consumption, all these things will evolve in a cyclic manner. So with These kind of localized industrial cluster, they are linked to renewable energy sources. This will create a self-sustaining hydrogen corridors in India. They will attract a lot of investment also. How to reduce risk of these investments? On the financing front, India, we have the multi-pronged approach to de-risk investment. Government must implement comprehensive policy framework. What is this? This policy framework, this should move beyond production incentives. They have to address fundamental financing barriers. So for starting, you can give, like suppose say I am the person A and I am going and I'm starting one plant. So you can give me some incentives. But starting the plant itself, I need financing. So for that, India can make some policy measures in this regard. So this will definitely help. This will establish long-term hydrogen purchase agreement, partial loan guarantees. This will reduce uncertainty in the investor also. It will also create regulatory sandboxes. Even new business models along with safety standards, they will be followed. Like fintech sector, how developed in India. Now fintech, finance and technology, they have going hand in hand. The same way hydrogen sector can also go. Second area, in order to reduce the investment risk, India's financial sector, they should move beyond traditional project finance situations that have been designed for these conventional energy infrastructure. Indian banks, financial institution, they should develop products. These products, they should address hydrogen distinctive challenges, like long development timelines, uncertain demand, even complex value chain also. While these finance and green bonds, they provide kind of initial momentum, this hydrogen sector requires innovative approaches like modular project, reducing capital requirement. All these things has to happen in mission mode manner. These kind of anchor plus financing models, they will help in order to bring the capacity. And equipment leasing structure, they will transform electrolyzer investment. They prohibit upfront cost. They will manage operations in good manner. This will follow successful model of solar and wind sector also. Solar and wind sector, you establish them and you give it to some them, they will operate and they will provide you money. This kind of policy also can be followed here. Third thing, India's international collaboration, they must move beyond aspirational agreement in order to challenge all these practical market making challenges. We need to establish standardized carbon intensity and hydrogen origin certificate. What it will do? This certification, this will enable export of the hydrogen. It even strengthen trust of India's hydrogen supply chain. There are three trade corridors are there. Hydrogen energy supply chain project between Australia and Japan. This shows like cross-border partnership can provide demand certainty and it will improve large-scale investment in country also. In the next few years, there are certain early projects in the industrial hubs such as Odisha, Maharashtra, Gujarat. They demonstrate viable business models that will shape our sector, how it develops in India. Green hydrogen project, they must integrate financial structuring from the beginning itself. The focus must be delivering hydrogen at prices that suit the industries, that suit the domestic, consumers. India's success in this green hydrogen, this will depend on leveraging abundant renewable energy resources through efficient project execution, access to low capital, even strategic investment also. So we discussed three articles today. Thank you. Thank you very much for discussion.